Davante, I think you miss him.
How could you not? How could you not?
Just hearing you talk about him, it's an amazing thing that I just think you missed him. That's all I'm going to say.
Some people thought that the Davante Adams-Raiders relationship was doomed from the beginning. Like you're at a wedding and you're like, I wasted a bunch of money on this gift. Because these two definitely aren't in it for the long haul. The one saving grace in my mind where I thought they had a chance was that Davante Adams genuinely loves Derek Carr. Once Derek Carr left, it was like a marriage that was kind of on the rocks, but the husband started drinking again. And this relationship is doomed. And we spent a whole lot of time wondering and speculating with denials of reports about this and that, but now here we are, and Davante Adams wants a trade. The Raiders, according to Adam Schefter, are open to it for a second-rounder plus compensation, and as Vegas would tell you and lots of other people would tell you, it seems like the Jets are the most logical destination. There is one other wild card team that I think is higher than you might expect, and that's simply the Saints. As Adam Schefter reports, Davante Adams has a relationship with Derek Carr. They showed some promise in the first couple games, some extreme promise with Clint Kubiak as their offensive coordinator. Something Davante Adams said to Kay Adams on Up and Adams the other day really made it feel like the Jets are just the slam dunk choice. And it was this when discussing a little bit of a miscommunication or not being on the same page between Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers in the game last week.
Yeah, just based off of the coverage, you get in like a two shell, cover 4. Obviously, Aaron was hoping that he would have gotten his head around a little sooner, to kind of put it on him. And it's not always easy to do that on the fly because you got to read coverage. But that's one of those plays that, Aaron and I had many of those early on in my career where we didn't link up on it.
So we know this about Aaron Rodgers. He doesn't like generally playing with younger wide receivers, and Garrett Wilson isn't young anymore, but he hasn't had any time or the quarterbacks to really develop to that level of next level wide receiver. It's going to take a little bit more time. And Davante Adams pointed this out about the time that it takes.
Aaron's the type of guy, he may be in a huddle and he'll tell you in a 2-minute situation at the end of the game, 46 seconds left in the game, and they'll say, hey, Tate or Garrett, you remember back in 2022 when we got that one look and you didn't look quick enough. Like I need you to just get your eyes around quick. So, filing that away in your memory bank, dealing with the elephant, Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
You got to be able to recall and correct some of those mistakes.
So we know that Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers have an almost ESP-level connection when it comes to the scramble, drill, and improvising, and all those other things that Aaron Rodgers loves to do. Not to mention, just like Aaron Rodgers, familiarity with the offensive coordinator, Nathaniel Hackett. I know I'm using Nathaniel Hackett as a selling point here, not because it makes sense, but because often human beings make decisions that don't make sense. Aaron Rodgers has this love and loyalty to Nathaniel Hackett, and nobody can quite figure out why. But it's understandable to think, just as veteran basketball players like getting the old gang back together, we've seen Aaron Rodgers very much wants the old gang in the form of Randall Cobb or Alan Lazard or various other guys that he wrote out on a napkin that he was interested in while talking to the Jets. I'm guessing Davante Adams was damn near the top of that list of guys. I'd love to hot take this to death and point out the other teams that make sense, but by far you can connect the most dots between the New York Jets and Davante Adams. And now it becomes a matter of, all right, is there going to be a bidding war for Davante Adams? And how much is Davante Adams, kind of like Brandon Ayuk, going to potentially sabotage it if he doesn't have one of his favorite teams? So we saw multiple teams very interested in Brandon Ayuk. Ultimately, they couldn't get the deal done largely because Brandon Ayuk was going to be a barrier. If Davante Adams wants to go to the Jets, he's going to end up with the Jets. And it might take a couple weeks longer than anticipated, and maybe the Jets try to play hardball in compensation. But of all the teams being discussed, the Jets are one of the ones that can do it most easily. They have the cap space today to sign Davante Adams without having to worry about doing anything exotic with anybody else's contracts. And I also think that though it would be a short-term move, Davante Adams' cap figure balloons to north of $30 million next year. So the Raiders are going to cut him anyway in the offseason. Any team that signs for him is either going to have to cut him or cut him a new deal. This is a short-term move, but the long-term dividend that it could pay for the Jets is getting Garrett Wilson up to speed on the intricacies and idiosyncrasies involved with playing with one Aaron Rodgers and aging Aaron Rodgers at that. Garrett Wilson could improve with the tutelage of Davante Adams in the short term, but it should pay dividends in speeding up Garrett Wilson's development so that if Aaron Rodgers does decide to come back and play next year, maybe Garrett Wilson is just A-OK on board, has that same level connection with Aaron Rodgers. As somebody whose team, the Houston Texans, is still going to play the Jets in the future, I'm arguing for something to happen that might not necessarily be great for my own individual team, but I got to sell it to you straight. It makes too much sense. It makes too much sense. The only question now is how excruciating is the process and how drawn out can it become? Much like it was with Aaron Rodgers, where it was being reported that it was all but done, and then many weeks later, the trade was actually executed. At least we have a hard deadline here with the trade deadline.